Welcome to Cycling Demystified and a special series of podcasts on the 10 essential pillars of bike fitting. We had such a good response from a recent webinar we did on this subject and so many questions that we thought we would dive deeper into the 10 pillars and bring you a podcast episode for each of them. We've dedicated an entire episode to each of the essential pillars so that you can take the exact same proven methods we use in our bike fit sessions and apply them to your own bike fit. Hopefully this will be particularly useful for those riders who can't make it over to our studio in London. We'll be releasing 2 episodes each week, one on Monday and one on Thursday. Follow along in sequence and you'll be able to build your bike fit up in the same order as we do in our studio sessions. As always, if you have any questions off the back of this series, get in touch. We want to hear from you and we'll help you find that amazing bike fit you've been looking for. So grab a seat, cup of tea and tune in so that we can share the knowledge we've accrued over thousands and thousands of bike fits. Weight distribution, the key to unlocking your bike fit. Have you thought about this element of your bike fit? Because it's not widely discussed, measured or tested. This is often the magic change which unlocks a rider's bike fit so that they can be more comfortable and find a higher performance. Understanding the principle of how your weight distribution affects your riding allows you to make better bike fit choices. Listen in for the principles, method and mistakes to look out for.
And we're back.
Welcome back to part 7 of our 10-part series on the essential pillars of bike fit. Last time we talked about saddle setback and how to get the saddle in the right position underneath your bum. What happens when saddle's too far forward, too far back, what are kind of the symptoms you might feel there. Hopefully, if you've been following along and you've been playing around with your bike fit, the saddle should be feeling pretty good at this point. And this is where we get into the exciting stuff, where usually this is like probably the most exciting part of the bike fit. It's something that lots of people don't really consider within their bike fit system, and it's not talked about quite so much, or there's not quite a clear message on like kind of how this kind of works. And today we're going to talk about weight distribution on the bike, or balance, center of gravity, all those things. They're the same thing.
They're all
really.
related.
And how, again, there is no one magic formula or one right or wrong. There's only choice, but you need to figure out where you're at before you choose where you want to be, rather than just guessing where you should be.
It's a motto for life, really, isn't it?
What, guessing?
No, the bit before.
Choose life.
Choose life. Such a good film.
All right. So let's choose weight distribution. Where shall we start?
Bike size?
So I think definition, basically.
Yeah, what is weight
it?
distribution? How does it...
Why do we care?
Why do we care? Why do we need to worry about it?
All right. We're going to go back to our squat. Love squats.
Wicked.
We?
We love.
My knees hurt from
It's such
squatting,
a good
so-
diagnostic for everything on a bike, but also in life.
Choose squats.
Choose squats.
Choose life.
That's a good t-shirt. We should get that t-shirt made up.
Mate, Chris
Choose
should get a
squats.
t-shirt with choose squats on it. We got to make that happen.
Get a lot of comments in the street if you had that. Walk into a gym.
Yeah. Chris from Strength for Endurance, if you're listening, get some t-shirts.
Make it happen.
Yeah.
Make it happen.
Squats.
Choose squats.
So let's go back to our squat analogy. And in order to perform a squat, you need to have balance. As you compress your legs, lower your body down, your bum goes out behind you, and your body will automatically lean forward to counterbalance the weight of your posterior, so you don't fall over. And essentially, that kind of shape, if you can imagine you in a squat position looking from the side, you kind of, about halfway down a squat, legs bent, bum sticking out behind you, body, torso leaning forward with good posture, nice straight back, so on. That is essentially you riding a bike. So that's kind of what a balanced bike position looks like. It's the same as like a balanced squat position. And you can imagine that if you leant forward onto your tiptoes whilst you were squatting, and the whole body kind of tips forward, and you lean forward, and the same thing would happen on the bike. So you would tip your toes forward, you would lean your knees and come forward over your feet a little bit more, and there are consequences to that.
Yeah.
And similarly, if you set your saddle a little bit further back, you can squat deeper into your squat, you can sit lower into your squat, you can sit further back behind your feet, and the more you have to lean your body forward. And there are consequences to that too. So I think today we're going to talk about kind of where along that selection you want to be, like how far forward or back you want to be, what the consequences are, what you'll feel, and what tests you can run to figure out where you are along that that line of balance. And this probably unlocks more things within your bike fit once you understand it than anything else, and it explains so much of kind of what you're feeling or some of the issues that you're feeling on the bike. And really, especially for those long distance rides or kind of unlocking some kind of sprint performance or anything like that, if you understand this, then you're going to understand a whole load of other stuff around your bike fit. So let's dig in. You got something to say, mate?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
I don't know. I think like when I think of like weight distribution on a bike, I'm kind of weighing up two costs.
Which are?
Because I'm a Yorkshireman, I'm always thinking about costs. The cost of energy it takes to hold your position on the bike, i.e. postural stress, versus the energy it takes for you to apply force through the pedals in the context of weight distribution.
Right.
So if your weight distribution is off, let's say you're too far forward relative to your feet there, and your weight is kind of unbalanced and not distributed neutrally across as much of your kind of muscular structure as possible, then there is a higher postural stress and a higher energy cost to maintaining that position, potentially.
Yeah.
So I look at it as how much energy am I using to hold myself up on the bike versus what is that taking away from the energy I have available to apply force through the pedals. Right. And in like a performance kind of context, so the longer the distance, obviously this becomes more and more important to be efficient on the bike. Is my weight distribution negatively affecting or positively affecting my ability to produce force sustainably over a given amount of time? Mm-hmm. And that is kind of how I think about weight distribution in a performance cycling context.
And what would we feel then? Let's talk about like the two different ends of it. Like what happens if your weight distribution is, say, a little bit too far forward? So
if you're too far forward, then you're going to be using muscles in usually the front of your legs, your anterior chain, to not only produce force, but also provide stability, which they don't like to do, because you're asking them to do double the amount of work that they want to do. You may compensate by placing excessive weight on your upper body, so through your hands, your shoulders, your kind of like upper back, all this kind of stuff. And you may feel slightly more tension, more kind of pressure going through the front of your foot. And all this takes energy away from you putting force through the pedals. So the cost of you generating power and applying force is greater than maybe it potentially could be. Now, caveat that with the more force you put through the pedal, the more of a forward position you can sustain. generally speaking. This is why you see kind of,
This is why when you
this is
see
why, yeah, you
the
see
pros,
World Tour pros,
yeah,
like
they can afford
on the tip
that.
of their saddles, like they can afford to do that because they're putting a lot of force through their feet, which stabilizes them. So that's kind of like it's a trade-off.
Yeah.
But for most people, you go too far forward, that's what you'll feel. A higher energy cost of sustaining the position relative to the energy you have available to apply force through the pedals.
Yeah.
I think it's good to break it down even further, just to kind of get back to the real basics of when we're on a bike. We have 3 major contact points: your hands, your bum, your feet, and you have to distribute your weight in the whole system throughout those 3 points. Generally,
Evenly, or
ahead of the game. Ahead of the game, yeah.
he said something.
Well, there's a hierarchy, right?
Right.
Of wherein the body can deal with more weight
Yeah.
relative to other parts of the body. So, yeah, force doesn't disappear. It just goes into different
goes
places.
somewhere.
So, yeah, going back to our squat, which is our favourite thing to talk about, everything goes through your feet. You're grounded on the floor or on a bicycle pedal if you're floating in space riding a bike. But all of that weight is stacked on top of your feet. So if your feet aren't supporting you enough, then things are going to be off. Think about what goes on above your feet. Essentially, it's your hips in terms of contact points from a bike. So your saddle, or seat, saddle. Poke the vet. Yeah, so your saddle, which is essentially just designed to support your hips and support your pelvic structure. It's not designed to take masses of weight. Because if your feet aren't doing enough, then all that weight is either going to go into your saddle, which is you're going to notice pretty quickly, or it's going to go into the other interface that you have with the bike, which is your hands. And as we know, your hands are not, and the handlebars are not designed to take any more weight than is necessary to keep you upright on the bike and steer the bike. If you think about driving a car, you can make a very heavy vehicle move with minimal effort. That's the same as riding a bike. It's a contact point rather than a stability point. So you want most of the load to be going through your feet as you apply force through the pedal. Your hips to be stabilized by the saddle and supported, so there's no kind of excessive rock, excessive kind of like movement on the saddle, and then your hands are just a contact point for you to point the bike where you want it to go. So that's kind of our hierarchy of stability.
So if you had to put it into percentages, roughly, very roughly.
It's different for everyone,
of
and
course,
depending on what you want to do. But I would probably go. Well, you're full in a face, so you go first. Because I think I'd be interested to see, because I've got in my mind what I'd want.
Do you think? I mean, you're probably talking. You're probably both going to be speaking from your individual experience, right? Like, how do you feel when you ride your bike? What sort of distribution do you think? If you had to like just guess off the top of your head, if I put you on the spot, if I had a gun to your head,
I'd probably go like say 65% through your feet. Maybe like 10-15% through your hands, and then the rest of it through your saddle.
Oh mate, I'd go like 75.
More through the feet.
Yeah. I don't want to feel anything in my hands, man.
That's the thing. I ride a bike with almost no weight on my hands at all, as long as I'm putting out enough power. I could take my hands off the bars any time. Except if I'm going over some rough terrain where I just need to hold on for dear life. But even then, you want as light a touch as possible. You get so many advantages from not putting too much weight on your hands. It means you can run lower front tire pressure, and it means you can go over bumpy obstacles without feeling it as much.
But this is the danger with like putting numbers to things, because it changes all the time. Like as Matt was saying earlier, the harder you push on the pedals, the more force your legs are putting against the system. You're literally, if you push against the pedals, you're pushing against the bike. It lifts you up.
You're unweighting yourself from the saddle.
Unweight yourself. So your legs are literally carrying you. And so you don't feel any weight on
Wouldn't it be
hands.
great if we had some kind of system where you could see the percentages change as somebody's riding a bike?
You know what? So I've been speaking to Tony Cork, master bike fitter Tony Cork, Talk Cycling. And his dream is to create like a weighing kind of device, which you can put the entire
What,
bike
like
on.
scales?
Yeah, like a floor plate.
Yeah.
Weighing scale, which you can see how much, like maybe
Distribution
in
scale.
graphic
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
in a graphic
Really
visual kind of
interesting.
way, like how much weight you're putting on. Because if you start pedaling harder, you'll see the front of the bike just become lighter
Yeah.
and less weight on the hands. And the saddle would become lighter, things like that as well. But as soon as you go back into that really easy chit chat,
All of a sudden, all your weight's going on the saddle, and maybe more on your hands as well.
So this is where you need to decide, where do you want your bike to feel optimal? Is it when you're going fast? Is it when you're going slowly? Or is it somewhere in between? Do you need some kind of all-round
cruising
kind of position?
kind of,
Like when I was riding, when I was doing a lot of bike guiding, I had a pretty kind of aggressive, fast kind of bike position, because you go on tour with some people and chase you around and stuff like that. So you need to be fast. Yeah. But the worst days out on tour is the slow days. So you had to be in the back group because your position was so far forward that it just took so much more effort to actually maintain like a slow position. And it was
it's a good point.
So
maybe if you're riding with people who are slower than you, you should think about your position on your bike. Like maybe you don't need to be so aggressive because you're going to have a tough time keeping up. I say in inverted commas, as in you'll have to slow down to somebody else's pace.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
But that's the same is true for if you're doing a lot of riding indoors.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, caveat that with generally speaking, if you're riding indoors, you're training a position to ride outdoors. But again, consequences.
Yeah.
And if going up hills, down hills, things like that. So we spoke a little bit about that in the previous episode, saddle setback. So, but going back to weight distribution throughout the bike, there are just 3 points of contact, and you need to decide where you want to put. Where do you want the percentages of distribution to be on your bike? And a lot of it depends on your body morphology as well. You get a rugby player in here who wants to take up cycling, and those guys are like stacked. They've got a lot of muscle mass on their upper bodies.
Got quite tight hamstrings as well.
Yeah, tight hamstrings,
tight everything else.
A lot of upper body muscle mass, and so as soon as you lean forward on the bike, they're going to be putting a lot more weight onto the handlebars than a lot of people. So you have to make a judgment about the amount of weight that they're kind of putting onto the handlebars, but also the strength they have to maintain that position. Yeah. And it's a difficult one.
Well, because you're talking about weight distribution on a bike, but you're also talking about weight distribution of somebody's body.
Yeah.
From top to bottom.
Yeah. In a certain position.
In a certain position, yeah.
So they're quite often the hardest people to fit because they're not traditional cyclists. In many ways.
So what are the elements that can affect weight distribution?
Well, lots of things.
What aren't the elements that can affect weight distribution?
Well, the classic one we kind of probably deal with most of the time is saddle setback and saddle position. So how far forward your saddle is, because it literally shifts your pelvis. So if you have saddle further forward, then it'll shift your whole pelvis forward, more weight forward. Yeah. And the opposite is true. So further back, shift your weight back. Yeah. But also handlebars and your cockpit position. So the lower your handlebars, the more you have to lean forward, the more weight comes forward. But opposite as well. So if handlebars are higher up, like a Dutch bike, then that pushes your torso back and your weight distribution goes backwards.
Correlation between the types of bikes you see, what the distribution is like, and the kinds of saddles you see on those bikes a lot of the time. So if you see a Dutch bike, you've usually got a big comfy couch, because you know that in that position you're going to put a lot of weight on your bum. Right?
Exactly.
And
there you go.
On the road bike, you got a razor blade.
It all makes sense now. Yeah.
Literally razor blades.
Yeah.
So sit on it. So the shape of the saddle can really influence how much you can lean forwards. And sometimes a saddle shape can unlock weight distribution. and better weight distribution. So we talk about a squat all the time, but like weight distribution, I quite like to talk about deadlifting
Right.
as well, because there is a kind of the principle in like performing a deadlift is that, you know, the bar moves vertically, your hips move horizontally. And, you know, can you move within a certain range? I'm talking about like drop bar road bike here, because you need to move between positions depending on the speed, the terrain, and the conditions. So does your weight distribution allow you to come further into your hip hinge, to move into the drops, and to come higher up into your hip hinge to put your hands back on the hoods? If your weight is too far forward or too far back, that range that you can hinge in your hips may be impeded.
So maybe you've got somebody who thinks that they need a saddle with tons of padding, but
It may not be the case. It may just be a weight distribution thing.
Yeah, quite often you'll find that people with too much weight forward will just kind of lean heavily into the front of their saddle and get a load of saddle pain there. And so they'll just be desperately changing their saddles all the time with no kind of results, because that's not the root cause. The saddle's not the root cause. It's actually your weight distribution on the bike. And so it could be just, you know, raising their handlebars up a little bit, and that kind of gets them to sit back into the middle of the saddle, things like that. But the other key thing that we deal with all the time in weight distribution, and that affects your saddle position, is seat tube angle.
What's that?
A bone of contention. That's what that is.
Now you're getting into my realms of the actual bike, because every time people talk about weight distribution, I'm looking at their bike and thinking, well, if your bike is if it's the wrong size, or if it's the wrong kind of geometry for the type of riding that you want to do, you might be forced to be placing your weight distribution somewhere where it's not really advantageous to the type of riding you're going to do.
Did you read our notes? Actually, we didn't make any notes.
Did you make notes?
This is a perfect caveat. Tell us.
Maybe I'm just a genius, Wade.
Just someone who thinks about their bike position
all the time.
But tell us what seat tube angle is.
Seat tube angle is from the bottom bracket to the top of the seat tube. It's like, what angle is that in relation to zero, as in a flat ground?
And that affects a steeper seat tube angle is one that's more vertical.
More vertical. Yeah.
And so the more vertical, that pushes your saddle forward.
Yeah.
And a slacker seat tube angle
pushes back. Going to be further back. Yeah. And that's going to limit your ability to put yourself in the position that you want, because your fore and aft there's a range of your fore and aft, but if your seat tube angle is really slack and it's so far back, you won't be able to get the rails of your saddle will run out before you can get maybe where you want. And if it's too steep and you need to be further back, you won't be able to get far enough, far back.
Absolutely. So this is where bike choice and geometry has a massive effect on both your performance and your bike fit and your comfort, because the bike will limit where you can place your saddle in space. And unless you kind of know what you need, you're just guessing. You're just guessing that seat tube angle is going to be right for you.
Most people don't choose a bike based on the seat tube angle if they're not Matthew.
I do.
Most people choose the bike they like the look of, and then they buy it, and then they try and get themselves into the position, and then they find out, oh, it's too steep or too slack or whatever. They come to Matt and he shouts at them.
There's a very good kind of middle of the bell curve, and that is 73 degrees. And that used to be the de rigueur seat tube angle for many, many years. And it's worked pretty well, because it pretty much sits within the middle of the bell curve, allowing people to get a balanced bike position, produce decent amount of power, and ride comfortably most of the day.
And then triathletes came along.
And then triathletes came along, messed it all up with their progressive bike geometries and tri-bikes, which, what did they do?
It's just everything's vertical.
Caused a lot of problems.
They wanted to be as far forward as possible.
But you know, that's what people started experimenting with. Pushing further forward, and that allowed people to kind of maintain more aerodynamic positions. You fold your body lower and forward, and so that kind of unlocked some more, I guess, performance gains. Yeah, I mean,
everything is pluses and minuses. You know, it allowed people to get into more aerodynamic positions, but it totally messes up the geometry, wheelbase and head angles and all of that other stuff. But if somebody's good at designing a bike, they're going to consider all those things, just like you guys will consider all the different variations, the different
decisions have consequences, man.
Exactly.
That's all I'm going to say.
So, there are definite use cases for having a much steeper, further forward kind of seat tube angle. But, case in point, like a tri-bike, you need aero bars in order to ride a tri-bike. What do aero bars do? Well, everyone thinks that they're there just to kind of get everything narrower and into a more aero position. But actually, they're there to support your body. Because you literally cannot ride the bike without aero bars. Because the body weight is so far forward that you need a brace.
Yeah.
And you need a brace underneath your elbows as if you're doing a plank, so that you can access bigger musculature like your back and your lats, so that you can hold your more body weight upwards whilst you're riding your bike.
Yeah.
And also holding more aero position. So that like aero bars, case in point that we have to deal with weight distribution. Your body is kind of leaned forward, so you need different musculature to kind of hold your body up and maintain it.
Also, if you're somebody on the slight outliers, if you've got long legs and short torso, steeper seat tube angles are helpful.
Depends where the length in your leg is.
True. So
if you got long femurs, you need a slack seat tube angle.
Literally just about to say. So
sorry, dude. I've stolen your thunder.
No, it's great. This is perfect segue because Tom Donu is about to deliver a bike to us for a lovely customer, James, and he has mega femurs.
Mega femur.
It sounds like a transformer.
The mega femur from Mattel.
It's like a boss from Sonic the Hedgehog or something. But it's true.
But he was a classic, really good case of you need a custom bike because you have such long femurs that this is why.
Can't wait to see the guy now.
Or you got
to going to be all.
You got to build it.
Oh God, I need to email him back. Opposite of me, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you've got a really long tibia, like you, which is the lower part of your leg, then you can deal with a steeper seat tube angle. If you have a longer femur, then you're going to need a slacker seat tube angle to get your weight neutral over the bike, so you can press straight down through
your knee,
the pedal, because your knee is going to be way out in front of your foot. Right. Don't get me started on cops. It's going to be way out.
What's cops?
Don't.
What's that?
Look it up.
Google it.
Myth of cops.
Myth.
So if your seat tube angle is too steep and you've got long femurs, then your weight distribution is naturally going to be much further forward relative to maybe where it wants to be. And then the other thing to look out from this as well, not only seat tube angle, but can you adjust the setback of your seat post? Which is why round tube seat posts often work better, because you have more choice in terms of setback angles.
Matthew.
Yeah, I've gone on a rant here, but it's super important, because if your bike doesn't allow you to distribute your weight effectively for the functionality of your body and the discipline that you choose to ride your bike in, whether you're whatever that might be, then you have choices to make. And if you don't have as much choice as maybe you could have, then you are limited.
Right.
And we don't like to be limited.
I think this is the problem with modern mountain bikes as well.
Don't get me started on that.
Well, modern mountain bikes, gravel bikes, progressive gravel bikes, modern road aero bikes.
It's almost as if bikes are not designed by people who know anything about bikes.
Well, I don't
that
think it's
be-
that.
Maybe.
No,
something
I mean, that's a gross
in that.
generalisation.
I
know.
Everyone's designing towards a certain idea, and ideas are trends in time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
ideas don't always fit everybody.
Yeah.
So the current.
I would add a lot of bike design is not so much bike design as emulation of other things that have come before and iteration.
Well, that's
rather
kind of
than,
what happens, isn't it? Someone takes up a certain stance. They say steep seat tube angles are the bomb, and then everybody else just follows.
Yeah. And then it's like, oh no, hold on. You're catering to 20% of the population instead of 80% of the population, and that's why you're not selling so much.
Yeah, well, like the problem is like when everyone kind of says like, this is the best.
This is
thing.
better. Yeah.
This is better, and then everybody, and then we get stuck in that situation, and as Matt said, there's no adjustability.
Yeah.
Like dropper posts. Amazing. Like they're so good. They're such a great invention, changed my bike riding, stuff like that. But they limit your position on the bike because
they're all zero
all
setback.
Zero setback, and there's very few
Yeah.
dropper posts that have any setback at all. Combine that with the trend of like pushing all mountain bike seat tube angles to like super steep all the way to almost like triathlon bikes seat tube angles.
They're basing a lot of stuff on what a lot of bike designers base stuff on the pinnacle of a particular
Let's call a spade
style.
a spade. They're basing it on World
Downhill.
Cup XCC and XCO and World like Tour racing, and that is not what everyone who's buying these bikes are doing.
No.
And
They've said it.
Like I wouldn't have a
And you're
problem if they offered like a range or like the ability to change it. It would be great.
Well,
like,
they
I
do.
think
The thing is, they do a little, but then they keep calling it endurance geometry, and people don't.
But even endurance geometry is becoming.
I know.
But what does that even mean?
It doesn't mean anything.
What does it mean?
Doesn't mean anything.
There's bike shapes.
Like, oh my goodness! Like that's stupid.
Anyway.
We're ranting.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
We're ranting.
Let's go back to weight distribution. Anyway, so last thing on weight distribution then, let's give the people actually some useful tips. How do we go about testing where your weight distribution is on your bike, and how do you decide where do you want it to be? You want to go through
You want me to go? Yeah. So first thing you can do is a little test which involves just you can do this on your turbo, just pedaling along. Can you take your hands off the handlebars and sit up like you've just won the Tour, and place your your hands back on the handlebars without falling forward?
Right.
So pedaling probably like 6, 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
Not too much effort. Kind of
Cruising along.
Yeah.
Cruising along.
Right. Take
And-
your hands off the handlebars. Sit back all the way back in the saddle.
Make sure you're in
Upright.
your comfortable sort of average cadence.
Yeah. And just see what happens. Is there a lot of compensation to be able to do that? Do you have to really push
yourself away.
off the handlebars? As you come back down, do you shift in the saddle? Do you feel yourself sliding forward in the saddle?
You're effectively doing a sit up, aren't you? But except you're shifted over your bike. It's just like trying to use your core,
to kind of sit upright, and you just want to see how easy it is to do that motion.
It doesn't have to be completely, no effort at all.
No, like
there can be some effort.
You need some core.
You need some
to
effort.
Kind of lift
I
your
think
body up.
the key thing is it controlled? Are you in kind of like complete control of the movement, or are you having to really push yourself away from the bars to
with
get
your
out of it
hands.
with your hands?
Yeah.
And when you come back down to hinge into the handlebars, are you having to catch yourself before you kind of fall forward and smash your face on the step?
So if you're doing it, if it's nice and easy and you feel controlled throughout, and if the effort level is low, then you're probably in a pretty balanced position.
Other thing to listen to with this as well is, does your cadence speed up as you come back down into the handlebars?
So your body will, as you kind of lean forward, your weight comes forward, and if your body understands that you're falling forward, it will try everything it can subconsciously to stop your body from falling forward. So that will include bracing through your hands, but also speeding up your pedaling, so you're putting more force through the pedals so that it lifts you off, so it stops you from falling down.
Second test.
Yeah.
Can you move your hands between the hoods and the drops by placing your hands between one position or the other, both at the same time?
So just floating your hands between the different positions without moving your torso.
Exactly.
So can you move your hands independently? And you can do the same with, like, can you move your hand to reach for a bottle, or can you reach behind your back to reach for, something in your pocket?
Or gesture at a motorist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you lift your hands off and that feel easy,
Yeah.
without you having to compensate or feel like you're, going to fall off the bike or lose control of the bike, things like that. If you can do all of those things, again, like you're pretty balanced and you're in a good, either a neutral position you describe, or where you're kind of super balanced. But if you're struggling, then it probably indicates that you're putting a little bit your weight distribution is too far forward. Maybe your saddle's too far forward, bar's too low, bar's too far forward, all that kind of stuff.
Third one.
And if you pass those two tests, then the final test is...
Well, this is my favourite one.
Yeah.
So what you want to do this on a turbo trainer, ideally. You want to put the bike into a big gear. So you're pedaling a low cadence, high torque. So, you're not trying to like catch up and maintain your cadence. It's like low RPM.
Right.
You want to be sweating.
Trudging.
Yeah.
Trudging.
You're in the
Like
drops.
85% effort.
Yeah. You're in the drops. And the idea is, can you maintain enough weight and force through the pedals, engage your core, and then when you're leaning forward position, see if you can take your hands away.
Right.
And maintain your body.
And maintain your body position without compensation. So no slipping forward on the saddle, etc., etc.
Yeah.
No speeding up of the pedals and the cadence. If your weight distribution is in a good place, it'll be hard, but you'll be able to hold it. And you're aiming for 5 seconds.
Yeah. Not like forever.
Not forever.
Not forever.
But if you can do that for 5 seconds, then you're probably in a good place.
Right.
If the weight distribution is off and your body weight is still too far forward, then it's going to be a race between your hands and the face to see what meets the handlebars first. And let's hope your hands win.
Well, your body won't let you.
Yeah.
Your body will be... if you take your hands away and you feel yourself dropping forward, your body will automatically do everything it can to stop you from face planting the stem.
If you need to call a dentist, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. And a bonus test.
If anyone does this and face plants and knocks their teeth out, then
We warned
that's
you.
on you.
Yeah. Another bonus test as well is, again, you're in a big gear or a bigger gear, and we just want to see if you can like come up out of the saddle like you're riding a little set of rollers on the road. Couple of crank turns,
So stand up.
stand up, sit back down.
Right.
We want to see how easy it is for you to get out of the saddle. So if you're too far back, you're going to really have to pull on the handlebars to get yourself to stand up out of the saddle.
Right.
And we also want to see where your body returns to as well. Do you return to the same place every time you do that movement? That generally signifies that if you are going back to the same place without any excessive shifting in the saddle, that your body's happy with where it is.
Yeah.
If you're having to really yank yourself out the bars to get out of the saddle, then your weight distribution might be a little bit too far back relative to your feet.
Good. So we've got, too far back, and also, signs that you're too far forward. Do those tests, and then you can start playing around with saddle position to influence, or it may not be saddle position, but usually that's the best place to start to influence kind of where you are in space. And if you're neutral and you want to figure out, how far forward you can go, then you can start edging that saddle forward a little bit and doing the test again and just seeing what the difference is.
And just before we finish, what do we need to look out for when we move the saddle forward and aft on the rails?
we were going to do this in the last episode, but I stopped Matt just before. But because we want to try and keep as many variables the same throughout our testing, this includes saddle height as we move the saddle forward. So otherwise it's an unfair.
Or backwards, depending on which way you go.
Yeah. So if we just move the saddle independently forward without changing the saddle height, as soon as you put your saddle forward, effectively the saddle is closer to the bottom bracket, which means it's a little bit closer to your feet, which means it's lower. So if we push the saddle forward, we also need to raise the saddle a little bit in order to keep the same leg extension. Otherwise, it's an unfair test. So everything, is there a golden ratio for this? Usually we advise a 3-to-1 ratio. So if you move your saddle forward 3 millimeters, you also want to raise it 1 millimeter to keep the
roughly the same.
Yeah, roughly the same. So usually I go like 6 millimeters forward, 2 millimeters up to give more of an effective change, or you can feel the change. Like 3 mil and 1 mil, most people won't feel the difference of that. So you go 6 mil, 2 mil.
And you can always split the difference if you've found that you've gone too far.
Yeah.
It's easier to go back 3 mil than go back 1.5 mil.
Yeah. But it's not perfect, but you can. That's a good enough kind of ratio for you to kind of play around with. And the same with, as Matt was saying, going backwards. If you move your saddle back 6 mil, you want to drop it 2 mil to maintain the same position. And ideally, you want to be able to move your handlebars at the same time, which is the more difficult thing you can do when you're indoors. So it's just something you have to do. So if you move your saddle back, you want to move the handlebars back to maintain the same reach. If you move your saddle forward, then you want to move your handlebars forward to maintain the same reach too, ideally. I know that's difficult at home, so you're going to have to make a judgment call on, once you've got that kind of reach to the saddle feeling good. If you move your saddle, say, back and down, and your weight distribution feels much better and light on the hands, pedaling feels good, but now you're a bit stretched to the handlebars, then that would indicate that, you need to shorten the stem a similar amount to how much you move your saddle back, so that you can maintain that reach to the handlebars. So then now you've got a good saddle position, effective pedaling, balance, and also reach to the cockpit.
And of course, then go outside and ride outside.
And then go outside and ride it.
Really shift your body around and feel how does the changes you've made, how do they affect the rideability of your bike? Going around corners, going uphill, going downhill.
But this is why it makes such a big difference to the whole of your riding, this weight distribution thing. Like, just getting it right allows you to, if you're balanced on the bike, you can go for longer, you can feel more comfortable, you're not kind of excessively leaning on your hands, you might feel more comfortable in the saddle, you might be able to generate better power, things like that. You might go too far forward and, you can't generate the power that you need to, win the sprint.
Well, ideally, you want to be in the centre of the weight distribution range on your bike, so that if you can pitch your weight a little bit forward, a little bit backwards, just by moving your body around.
Yeah, I mean, most people who are just out riding, that's a good place to be. But then once you know where that kind of centre point is, then you can choose. You have autonomy. You own your fit, because then you can choose, all right, I'm going crit racing. I want to move my saddle forward because I want to be, over the bottom bracket more. I want to have that sprintability. I want to be a little bit more aero, and I don't have to maintain it for as long. Or I'm doing ultra distance, so I need to take as much weight off my hands as possible. So I'm going to move everything back a little bit. I'm going to move the handlebars back and move the saddle back and down a little bit, and get my legs doing most of the work. And that keeps my hands kind of free.
And it's not limited to riding discipline either. If you suddenly go and hit the gym for 12 months or whatever, and you increase the capacity of your body to sustain a given load, then your weight distribution may change as well. So it's not just the bike that has an influence on where your weight distribution might want to be.
Yeah, and your body type as well. What happens? We definitely had a guy, Louis, who used to be a bodybuilder. Big upper body. First saw him, had to sit him quite far back, take the weight away from his arms. But he's now transformed himself into more of a cyclist. So suddenly he can sit a little bit further forward. So things change. But if you understand where you're at, you have a reference point, then you can start making choices. So that's where we can go. Poof. All right, that was a big one.
Got into that, didn't we?
Yeah, you did. Oh, can't wait till the next one.
I've got some thoughts on the next one.
So next part is a big part, and Matt's going to take us through that one. It's pretty in depth, I think.
Might
What
get-
we're talking about crank length. Hey, everyone's favourite topic. Very trendy right now. But yeah, once you've set your cleats in the right place, got your saddle height right, got your cockpit right, saddle setback, weight distribution, then start playing around with the crank length.
Interesting.
All right, till next time, folks.
Here's what I want you to do. I want you to tell all your friends about me. At Cycling Demystified on Instagram. Tell everyone. And leave us a review on your podcast platform, whether it's Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, whatever. That would help us out a lot. Suffering from numb hands, tingling toes, and any other persistent discomforts when you ride? These are all signs that your bike fit could be improved. If you're bike fit curious, get in touch with Way or Matt by emailing info@foundation.fit or finding them on Instagram at FDN_bikefit. Finally, for all your bike servicing needs, custom dream bike or hand-built wheels, go to www.frequencycycleworks.com or find me on Instagram at frequencycycleworks. Until next time.